Corks in Conversation with Mark Greaney.
I am so excited, Cathi, that he was and appreciative that he was able to fit us in his schedule because he's got a lot going on. He had this book, a standalone book, Armored. This is like his 20th novel, came out earlier this month. And also, his first debut novel is being made into a big blockbuster that comes out right now called The Gray Man. So, busy guy.
Yes, and I can't wait to get into it. But he also, we should note, in his list of 20 books, did write 3 books with Mr. Tom Clancy. How cool is that?
Which is amazing. Oh my God, that's so exciting! Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear all about it. So anyway, we're gonna. You should tell everybody about him, Cathi, so we can get to the grilling.
Yeah, because we're very tough.
Yes.
It's my pleasure. Mark Greaney is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Gray Man series, as you mentioned. I'm holding it up now. This is a new release of the Gray Man, which came out in 2013, I think. We'll ask Mark.
2009.
If we're wrong. 2009.
2009.
Thank you. And this is so now. There's been 11 Gray Man series. The latest was Sierra 6. He's also the New York Times #1 bestselling author or co-author of 7 Tom Clancy novels. The most recent was Tom Clancy's Truth, Faith, and Allegiance. He collaborated with Tom on 3 Jack Ryan novels before Mr. Clancy's death in 2013. He also has written, as you mentioned, several other wonderful thrillers. The movie The Gray Man is in theaters now and streaming on, and we're recording this a couple days before it comes out on Netflix. So it comes out on Netflix this Friday, or today, as you guys hear this. In his research for his 20 novels, Mark has traveled to dozens of countries, visited the Pentagon, military bases, many intelligence agencies, along with training alongside military and law enforcement in the use of firearms, battlefield medicine. So if you have like a moment today, he could probably help you through, like if you choke on anything, Christy. And of course, close range combative tactics. Whew. So we have a lot to get into. He lives in Memphis with his wife, 3 stepchildren, and 3 dogs. We will not forget to mention them, Lobo, Ziggy, and Winston. And Mark, welcome. It's nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I have another dog, so there's 4 now. His name is Mars.
Gosh.
Yeah. It's really one
Mars?
too many.
I was going to say, how'd you get the names?
My stepdaughter Ava is a huge David Bowie fan, and she named him Mars. Lobo and Ziggy were mine from the past. I got married 2 years ago, and they had a dog, and now we have 2. So, yeah, I've got three new stepkids and 2 new dogs.
Oh, not much going on in your house
That's
at all.
quite a change. Quite a change.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you could fit us in, and we're actually, normally this is where we talk about the wine we're drinking, and we contemplated it, everybody.
We did.
But we are recording this at midday, so we're gonna stick to whatever we're drinking. But I got our new mug here, so I'm gonna drink some water.
So we'll say
and
cheers
then we'll
to
get
Mark
into the
and
questions.
All the things.
Cheers, yes.
Cheers with
Cheers.
our water.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so the book that we're talking about that came out this month, which is awesome as well, and I think they're making a movie out of this one too, is called Armored. And this one, a little bit about it is about Joshua Duffy. He's a close protection agent, which is a professional bodyguard, I guess. And he worked in, elite forces in Lebanon, and then he got out alive, but he lost his lower leg, one of his legs, and so now he's working as a mall cop because that's just the way things rolled in the breakdown of everything. And then he runs into an old colleague and hears about a gig down in Mexico, which pays really well, but is very, very high risk. And so that's where the story goes. And we go through a lot of action, I would say, in Mexico with the drug cartels and, espionage and all kinds of stuff. So great read. And so I'm going to start out asking you a question about this, because when I was looking into it, you had said that you first came up with this idea as a script for an audio play, and then it was very popular, so expanded it to a novel. But I'm curious, what exactly is an audio play, and how did you get involved in doing that?
Yeah, so there was even one iteration of it before the audio play. I got the idea like in 2011 to write it as a screenplay. So I started writing it as a screenplay. I'm not a screenwriter. I thought I could be. I was also writing Tom Clancy books, about that time. So I was writing these big 700, 800 page novels, 200,000 word books. So it's really hard to write a 120 page screenplay, which is probably 25,000 words, or I'm not even, maybe less than that. And probably 12,000 words. I'm not sure. But I kind of shelved it because, it was way too long. I was only half done with it. And there was no one breathing down my neck, like for all my other books where you sign these contracts and they're like, hey, we need that Clancy book by, July. So
Yesterday.
it just kind of, yesterday. So it sat around for a while, and then Audible, the audiobook company, came to me and said, we'd like to do a scripted audio drama with you if you had an idea. And so they would hire actors and do sound effects and music, and it's just like an old time radio audio play, sort of a movie for your ears, I think is what they like to call it. And I like the idea of it because they sent, I listened to some other audio plays, and I thought they were really cool. But on top of that, I wanted someone breathing down my neck so I would finish this thing that I'd had sitting around for years. And I was like, okay, audio play, whatever. It was hard to write. I didn't know what I got myself into. But it was ultimately very fulfilling and fun. They were about to start recording it right when COVID happened. That delayed everything almost 2 years, I guess, year and a half. And but they recorded it. I think there's 29 actors playing like 35 speaking parts. There's It's a 5.5 hour long play. And I'm really proud of it. And you can do a lot of things in the audio realm that you can't necessarily do on the written, on the page. But at the same time, I wanted to expand that story. I wanted to tell it as a novel because I'm a novelist, and I wanted to sort of expand it, going deeper into the backstory and giving some texture and depth that you can't give just with audio cues. Because when in an audio play, either someone is saying it or you're hearing, a piece of equipment or
that's what I was wondering.
Like
how do you, because your action scenes are so great to read, and I'm like, how do you do that in just audio?
Yeah, I mean, you should listen to the sample on Audible. I mean, they basically said, listen to these things. And then I wrote it, and I wrote every little audio cue. I'd be like, this type of an engine is going for 15 seconds. And then this, so I think it ended up being like 660 pages of writing for a 5-hour play, and
wow.
Again, I was really happy with it, and they got good actors, and it was a lot of fun to listen to. This was previous to me seeing the film of my work, so it was sort of the first time I'd heard a real dramatization. I've obviously audiobook narrators, and I have great audiobook narrators, but this level of dramatization was really, really cool to hear. But all along, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to sell it to Hollywood, and I wanted to make a novel out of it. Unfortunately, I was able to do both.
That's awesome. That is
awesome.
So cool.
Thanks.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Christy had mentioned your research, or I mentioned your research, but the research into this, I know Christy wanted to ask you about. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Cathi.
Initially when I was writing Gray Man novels, I did some training with firearms just because I was never in the military, and I got deeper into that, and I started training in battlefield medicine and team tactics and force on force stuff. And then eventually I found myself training with high risk civilian military contractors, these guys that go downrange. This was in the late 2000s. So Iraq and Afghanistan, and protect dignitaries or protect locations. I did a lot of training with them, and I would live in the team houses or the bunk, the team rooms or the bunk houses. And I would travel in the big Chevy Suburbans with them, strapped with all your guns and do all this training. And I got the idea that you could write a story about these guys. It's a very blue collar job. It's like truck drivers, but you carry a gun, and it made a story about them and not about the people they protect. It could be very interesting. And so that was the initial thing. And it was going through all this research where I got the idea for the story, researching for something else where I got the idea for this story.
Wow.
Well, how did you actually get involved in doing all this stuff? I mean, is there just like a website that's like, hey, I want to train to be a whatever, or do you like go find some Tennessee militiamen or something, or
pretty much. No, there's a school in Middle Tennessee. I live in Memphis, so in Middle Tennessee, there's a place called Tactical Response, and I went there just to train with handguns, and then I went back to train with rifles, and then I trained with like long distance shooting, and then I started doing sort of team tactic stuff, and then we're doing night stuff and advanced rifles, and I mean I probably have taken 50 classes there.
Did anybody try to recruit you?
No, I think I was became sort of the mascot once I became a published author, and I kept going back there. I remember it wasn't at that school, but I've trained at some other places. I remember a former Delta Force guy who was training me with rifles, and along with a bunch of law enforcement guys. I was like the only civilian, and after one of the iterations of the training, he goes like, "Greaney, I really, really admire your enthusiasm," which was like the most backhanded compliment you could possibly give. But I mean, I still appreciate it.
Take it.
He's like, right. Your effort is amazing, or something like
you're
that.
Really you're a go-getter for.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm picturing you with the flak jacket that says writer on it. Like, remember the movie Castle?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah.
So awesome. Did you ever feel like you were gonna were you ever scared during the training?
Oh, scared a lot. Yeah, it was all live fire. Okay. So it's all real bullets. A lot of it's at night, and there's a lot of two-way stuff where you're not just shooting at a target. There's people shooting at targets by you, and you're shooting at targets by them, and there's movement. I mean, it's very they take this very seriously, because there's definitely life and death stuff. And I remember walking backwards and feeling the pressure of bullets going, like within a foot of my back. And I'm shooting at a target, and I'm like, if I stop, the guy who's shooting on this side of me is going to shoot me. And if I go too fast, that guy's going to shoot me. And there's, all sorts of different things like that. Wow. And obviously you have the same responsibility that they have, not to shoot them. So there's the right. training is very, very intense. And, but like nothing in my life has gotten me more like dialed in and focused than to do stuff like that.
Well, I mean, when you read,
that explains why it's so well written. That's what I was. Yeah. Go ahead, Cathi.
The detail in the action scenes, and I mean, you can tell that you have experienced this, because I don't know how else you would possibly be able to write with that kind of intensity and accuracy. Okay, so let's switch and talk about. You're welcome. Talk about Gray Man. We'll get to the movie a little bit later, because that's a whole other thing. But I am so this was your debut novel that got published. I know you had written a few before, you'd said in other interviews.
Yeah.
The practice novels, right, that didn't make it. I'm wondering about, and you mentioned how Armored came to be. How did Gray Man come to you? Was it plot, or was it actually the character?
Yeah, so I'd written two other books, 2 manuscripts. The first one I never even showed to anybody. The second one, there was an agent who was an agent of an author that I really liked, and I saw he was going to be in San Diego at a writers conference. So I went out there and submitted 20 pages or 10 pages or something. And I had really, really like crippling social anxiety until well into my 40s. And so I think I signed up to talk to like 3 or 4 agents, and the first 3 I just stayed in my hotel room. I just was too scared to have to hear anybody tell me what they thought of my writing. And the last guy, I was like, all right, I've got to just man up and just take it. And I went in there and he said, this is the best thing anyone's ever given me at a writer conference. But he ended up not publishing the book. The submission he liked, he loved the writing, he loved the action, but he didn't think the story. He thought the story was sort of too, I think he said, like too, just like it was too ambitious for someone that hadn't been published before. And but he's like, write something else, and I'd love to read it. And that was all the encouragement I needed. And so I wrote a whole book called Goon Squad, and it was about this character named the Gray Man. And I got the idea. I was down in El Salvador. I was down in Guatemala studying Spanish, and one weekend I just went to El Salvador to the beach, and I was sitting in this bar where beers were like 40 cents or something, and an American guy came in there and he sat, in the corner of the bar, and he turned the little light off next to where he sat so he could sit in the dark. And he didn't look like all the like hippies and surfers and stoners, and I was just a language student down there. I was like late 30s. And I just sat there having a beer, and I just made up this whole backstory for this guy, not to write a book about him, just because that's what I did, because I wasn't doing anything else. And he was CIA, ex-CIA, but now the CIA was after him. So he's living in the developing world, off the grid, can't have a cell phone, all that sort of stuff. And after a day or so, I was like, okay, that's a character for a book. Wow. And then, so I gave that agent Goon Squad, which was the first book I wrote about him. And he called me up and said, I like your lead character, and I like this little subplot where all these different teams are chasing after him, but your main plot is kind of boring. So write a whole nother book about this guy, and then I'll look at that. And so I was just, the throes of depression for a couple of days. You're very trusting. And then he was all ahead. He was the only agent that was talking to me. And so then I wrote Gray Man in 6 months in 2007, and that's the one that ended up getting made. So It took a while.
And it's good. It's so good too. I mean, when I realized it was your debut, I was like, wow, that's really good.
Oh, thank you.
But now I know you worked at it.
Yeah.
So I loved comparing the two characters, Court Gentry in Gray Man, and Josh in Armored. And they're very, very different characters, except for their love of Oakley glasses. I would say that they both have a pair of Oakley glasses, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But I presume that when you created Josh from Armored, it was a very intentional departure from the Court Gentry kind of character. And why'd you choose to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The contractors that I hung around and knew and know to this day are very like blue collar guys, and I wanted to tell a story about this family man who is down on his luck, and he has one sort of skill that he's trained to do, and he's not able to do it because he's injured early in the book. And 3 years later he's working mall security, and I wanted to, it's that whole story arc of your hero. You have to put them in somewhat of a desperate situation. You don't have to do that at the beginning, but it doesn't hurt. And so, I had this guy in my head and everything he was going through. And that's why he would take a job that looked like a suicide run, but it paid well. And, he thought it was worth the risk. At least until he got down there and got in trouble. So he's very different from the Gray Man, who has vulnerabilities himself, but he also has, a wide array of skills. Josh Duffy couldn't be a spy. I don't think he'd want to be a spy. He wants to get home and have spaghetti with his wife and kids every night.
I loved that difference. And I also loved Josh's partner, Nikki.
Yeah.
She is equally as badass as he is in a very different way.
Yeah.
I just love the concept of a couple together, both kind of being in this. And how fun was that to write about a husband-wife team doing this stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to write, not for any larger reason. I just thought it would be cool. I have a lot of alpha females in my life, and I wanted to write about an alpha female in a positive way. Yeah. And and I've spent a ton of time around people in the military, at military bases or whatever, and you meet these young people and you think, I couldn't put this person in a book because nobody would believe that there would be somebody this cool and this competent, with this much responsibility at this young age. Like, it just boggles my mind, and I think Nicole is 25 when she's a captain in the Army, but I'm talking about 19-year-old enlisted females who are like landing helicopters on the back of destroyers, and I'm thinking, boy, when I was 19, I was selling CDs and records at a record store, and I was trying to make assistant manager and thought I was pretty cool.
Pretty impressive,
yeah, exactly. So I wanted to show this, and I was like, if people don't think it's realistic, then that's their problem, because it is. And I wanted to sort of play against type. I think people would expect you have the man of the house going into danger while the woman like worried and rubbed her hands together, back at the homestead, and took care of the kids. And I was like, that's not Nicole. She's getting him through this. He's a more passive guy. Their relationship is really great. Yeah. But they're very different personalities. And I wanted to sort of like take that through the whole story. And she became a bigger and bigger character, because I'm like, what Josh needs right now? He needs Nicole. And
right.
Whether it's on the sat phone, or whether she's doing something behind the scenes, or whether she's, taking a more aggressive role, and it was a lot of fun to write. And I will do a second Armored book, and there will be as much Nicole in it as there is Josh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm very glad about that.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Christy, I think it's time. What do you think? Sure. So it's time for our midway question. Okay, we ask our the authors we get to talk to a question in the bottle, kind of a random question you might get at the bottom of a bottle.
Okay, so the question is, if you were to be banned from your local library, what would be the reason?
Oh my gosh.
That's ridiculous.
I know what the reason would be. It's not an exciting answer, but the truth is for eating, bringing food in. No, there were years of my life. Like one thing I love about books is like they've helped me through tough times in my life, just like that escapism or whatever. And there were times in my life where I would go to Barnes and Noble, and it's not a library, but same idea, and just grab a book off the shelf that I wanted to read, go sit in the cafeteria, drink coffee all night, eat something and read, and then put the book back on the shelf because I didn't have the money to buy it. And I've since bought every book I remember reading. I've bought all the authors' books
to make up for it.
And my rationale at the time was, hey, I'm buying coffee. It's like whatever.
You're getting something.
but yeah, if I was going to get tossed out of a library, it'd be because I'm sitting somewhere in the stacks with some food or something to drink, and sitting there with a book in my lap, and I could see that happening.
That's really funny. I actually was just in our local library the other day, and it is so nice now that you can bring coffee, like as long as it's got a cover, into the library.
Oh, that's great.
I remember, yes, and in college, I spent a lot of time in the library, and I would smuggle in food and beverages, because who can not, but you weren't supposed to have it in there then.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's all changed.
I lived in this up in the stacks. I went to Memphis State University. It's now University of Memphis, and I just lived in the library and microfilm and all that sort of stuff. I love researching and history. Before I was even planning to be a writer, it was just what I like to do. So I lived in libraries.
Yep, I would try to get in there and find one of the little coral room areas upstairs that are quiet, but then you could sleep too. That's if you wanted.
Yeah.
You could fall asleep if you want. Or other things, not me, but Okay, so I want to get talking a little bit about the Gray Man making a movie, getting a contract. I mean, that's just kind of next level, and then this to be such a blockbuster and stuff. And so from an author's point of view, I mean, how much involvement do you have when did you get a contract, and did you sign your life away on it, or do you what's the
I mean, initially, so my first novel was a mass market paperback, a little airplane read for those that don't know, and it came out in end of September of 2009. And I think in August of 2009, before it came out, I optioned it to Hollywood, to New Regency, to one of the studios. And it was a decent amount of money. I mean, for me, it was, you know, it was more than I got paid to write the book as an advance, but it wasn't, you know, change your life money. But for me, what I saw was, now when this little paperback comes out, this new writer nobody's ever heard of, I can say, yeah, Hollywood bought the rights to this, and that would give me some cachet. And that's all I thought would ever happen. And I was thrilled for that. So after 3 years, the studio had written a script, and the option had run out and was coming back to me, and they wanted to extend it. And I let them extend it, and they paid me a little more money. And Brad Pitt was signed up to play the role, and the screenplay was terrific. And the writer of that screenplay, Adam Kozad's a terrific writer, and we became friends. We're still friends. And then that died on the vine. And so, you know, 5 years after it sold, nothing had happened, and the rights came back to me. And suddenly there was all this interest once New Regency lost the rights. So my agent had me on conference calls with people like all day long for a couple of days.
Wow.
And there was a lot of interest by some very big Hollywood people, and I was really surprised. And then I did a conference call with the Russo brothers, who at the time, Captain America Winter Soldier had just come out, but they'd actually read the Gray Man book while they were filming it. And I had this conference call with them, and we talked about the character and the story and where it might go and yada, yada. And I hung up the phone and immediately called my agent. I said, these guys, you know, out of everybody I talked to, and I like, everybody I talked to, I liked, and they had pluses and minuses, but I really believed in the Russos. And so they had me come out to LA and spend some time with them before Joe Russo wrote the script. Wow. He wrote a script for Sony at the time. And then they started making all the Marvel movies. Everything kind of got distracted. Sony tried to make it with another director, Christopher McQuarrie, and an actress, Charlize Theron, was going to play the lead. And so they rewrote the whole script into something that didn't look like my book anymore. And not just because the lead was a female, it was like a completely different plot. And that kind of died on the vine, and I never thought anything would happen about it. But probably once a year, I'd hear from my agent. He'd be like, you know, I'm just making up names. Chris Hemsworth wants to do it. Bradley Cooper wants to do it. But I've been hearing that for so long that it didn't mean anything to me. And the spring of 2020, they said, you know, Ryan Gosling is interested in it, and they're actually making some changes to the script right now. And the Russo brothers want to get back involved. And I'm just like, oh, that's cool. And I didn't think for a second anything would happen.
Ryan Gosling.
I just didn't believe, you know.
Yeah.
And then it all came to pass like 2 years ago this week is when they, you know, actually made the announcement that it was greenlit. And even then I was telling people it's going to fall through, trust me. And then when they started filming, it got pushed back a few days because of COVID. And or a few weeks before COVID, and I was like, "See, I told you, every one of these actors is going to do something else in 6 weeks, and it's going to fall apart." So wow. I've been fortunately proven wrong. I was at the premiere last week in LA, and I'm being interviewed, and they're like, "You know, what do you think of all this?" And I'm like, "I don't know what to think of all this because I've spent 13 years saying this is not going to happen, so I don't know what's
going on." That's so surreal.
Yeah, it really is.
And what a crazy, I guess, full circle time where your 20th novel is coming out. Yeah. At the same time, the film for your first published novel is coming out. That's really crazy.
Yeah, I've seen on my calendar for 2 years that July of 2022 is going to be kind of tough. It's going to be a whirlwind, and here we are. It's going great.
Wow, well, that's amazing. I did go see it yesterday with our sound engineer, my son, and so he's a film major. He hasn't read the book yet, so I wanted to get both perspectives. And he liked the movie, and I liked the movie, and I love the book. So I thought, okay, it's different, but it's good. They're both good. So I'm like, we'll see. Well, are they now? Do they like? You've got now 10 other books, Gray Man books after that. Do they have rights to all of those, or do you? Okay. They do, and you know the intention was to make a franchise out of this. We'll see how it does on Netflix, you know, and
Yeah.
I don't want to, say if I don't have two movies, then I'm disappointed. I'm happy to be where I am. But,
Yeah.
it would be terrific if they
Yeah,
kept
you
going
still
with it.
like your day job, so.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how you do all of it, though.
Yeah, how I did some research, and you're publishing like 2 books a year, and these are not short books. This is not an 80,000. These are like
No, they're
150,000,
not.
200,000.
Yeah.
How do
How
you
many
do
pages
two
are in
books a
this book?
year?
First off, for anyone that wants to be a writer, writing 150, 175,000 word books is not the way to go. It's a self-inflicted wound by me. It's just, it's the Tom Clancy effect. I started writing bigger
Yeah.
books with Tom, and I'm that's where I am now. I'm writing my 12th Gray Man book. It's due at the end of the month. With everything else going on, it's due, whatever that is, 9 days from now or something. And I'm working all the time on it. The day of the premiere in LA, I was in the lobby at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the car picked us up to take us to the red carpet like at 4:45, and at 3 o'clock I'm still in the lobby working because I'm so down to the wire. But
Wow.
it used to be easier because you didn't have 20 something books under your belt, and you hadn't told all these stories. And at the time, the only thing competing with my time was an Xbox. And now I have 3 kids and the
4 dogs.
dogs and
4 dogs.
the house and just the business that goes with writing has gotten obviously a lot bigger. I mean, when you're starting out, you're desperate to, do any publicity whatsoever. And then it's like, be careful what you wish for, because then then you get a lot more than you can handle. But I mean, it's a wonderful place to be.
Wow. We were talking with Don Bentley, who also does the Tom Clancy franchise, a few weeks ago. And I very gracefully said, how the hell do you get everything done?
Yeah.
Which wasn't a very graceful question. But he was like, I just write all the time. He's like, I don't even have a schedule. Like, I just write every single minute I have time. And I imagine that's what you do too.
Yeah, Don called me when they approached him about doing the Clancy stuff. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, here's where I am. I'm not going to tell you to do it because it is really hard. It's one of the hardest things I ever did. But I'm also going to tell you that you'd be an idiot to pass up this opportunity because, it really did help my career, help my writing. Everything about it was good for me. You just, you lose a lot of sleep, and you feel like every book takes a little chunk out of your brain. It's never coming back. But at the same time, it's a great opportunity, and I think he's happy. I know he's happy he's doing them, but I think he would say that the effort is worth the reward.
Wow.
Right. So you think you're just going to keep on doing 2 books a year indefinitely?
No, I
to
have get off this
now
train.
I've got to.
Yeah. No, it is harder and harder. I'm writing the same amount of words as I said, as I was before I had any other obligations really. And then also, once you've told 20 stories or 22, I was a ghostwriter too for a couple books. So it's really my 22nd book is Armor.
Oh, wow.
So, you can't cover the same ground that you've covered before. I don't ever want to be one of those authors that's just like phoning it in and telling the same thing and just moving the location. So I want to do something different and new with each book. And that's going to turn into one a year pretty soon.
Yeah, you need to have time to ruminate
the next 2 years.
And stuff.
Yeah, you really do. You need to have time to go out and get new information. And there's a couple of opportunities this fall that I have that I probably won't be able to take advantage of because I have to finish another book by the end of the year. And they would be great opportunities, be great fodder for me in my writing, but it looks like I won't be able to do it. So that's where I am now.
So we got to ask you, I know our listeners and viewers are going to want to hear the Tom Clancy story and what it was like working with him. And I can't imagine what you learned from him along the way.
Yeah, we had the same editor, and I'd only had a couple little paperback books out at the time. One was Gray Man, which had sold to Hollywood, but I was certainly no household name. And they called me and asked me if I'd be interested in co-authoring with Clancy because he was looking for a new co-author. And I actually tried out. I was such a fan of Clancy books. I knew all the characters. If it was anybody else, I wouldn't have known. I would have had to do a ton of research. But instead, I just wrote like 25 or 50 pages, I can't remember, not really part of a book, never used it for anything, but just like this fake scene in the middle of a fake book where I just have all the characters in there and the way they talk to each other, the relationships, the jobs, the skill sets. It was kind of all on display. It was like my little tryout. It was my own idea because I felt like there were probably other people in the running. They just asked me if I was interested.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave them that. And then they had me go meet Tom in Baltimore, Tom Clancy. And then I got the job and did 3 with him before he passed away. And then really quickly, his family asked me to continue the Jack Ryan series. So, I mean, I just learned how to write bigger in scope books, more geopolitical, like if I get an idea, if I start to ask myself, I wonder what the White House thinks about what's going on right here. It's like, well, now I'll go into the White House and write about that. Whereas before it was pretty much a guy on the ground, and, it's just made my writing bigger, I think.
Oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
It's crazy.
Great.
Okay, before we wrap it up, Christy has got a final question for you. It's very serious.
All right.
Yes. Okay. Which of your characters would you like to share a meal with, and what would it be?
Wow. That's a good question. I sadly have killed off like some of my favorite characters. You end up regretting that, especially you don't know you're going to write this big long series. But in the first Gray Man book, a character named Maurice, who's actually played actually the version of the female in the film, played by Alfre Woodard. This character Maurice is Corks' sort of mentor and handler in his early days in the CIA, and he dies in that first book. And I need him in every other book. So there's always a lot of there's a lot of flashbacks where Court remembers something that Maurice said. I do that in every book. But just the way I built that character, it's like if he was a real person, that's the guy I'd want to hang out with, and I would want to have fish and chips in an Irish pub somewhere in Alexandria, Virginia, or DC area, that sort of thing, where all the spies hang out, and somewhere near CIA.
Is that true? Should I'm going to start looking around every time I'm up in Virginia then.
Yeah.
Because all the spies are there.
Yeah, they actually. I've been told by agency people that they do training in Alexandria, in Old Town Alexandria, because it sort of approximates Europe a little bit, and then to just kind of keep your eyes open, especially in the mornings, and you see some training going on, and I feel like I've witnessed that.
Interesting.
Wow, that's so cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so
that sounds
lovely.
good.
We're so we feel really thrilled for you, and we're so happy to have had this time with you, especially during this crazy time. I know our listeners are going to want to know more about your books and reach out to you. What's the best way for them to find you?
My website is my name, Mark Greaney, GREANEY books.com. And that has everything about the movies and all the books and audiobooks and everything right on there.
Awesome.
Well, I guess all we have left is to thank you very much and to do a cheers for future success.
I gotta say, I missed the wine, but congratulations.
I know.
We're winging it.